Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of the huge room. The walls stretched up so high he could barely see the top. Around him sat 12 different types of aliens, each one looking down at him like he was a bug under a glass. The room was quiet except for the soft humming sounds that some of the aliens made when they breathed. Jake had been to this place before, but never like this. Never as someone being judged. The Vorthok were the worst to look at. They looked like living crystals that glowed with a cold blue light. Their leader, Tyshrol, sat directly in front of Jake. The alien had no face that Jake could understand, just smooth crystal surfaces that somehow showed emotion. To his left were the Zephyrians. They looked like giant bugs with too many arms and eyes that never stopped moving. Their wings made a constant buzzing sound that gave Jake a headache. They thought they were so smart with their fancy machines and computers. The Nebulans floated in big glass tanks filled with gas. They had no solid bodies, just clouds of purple and green smoke that swirled around. Jake had never liked them. They acted like they knew everything about everything. There were 9 other alien types in the room, but Jake had stopped caring about their names years ago. They all thought they were better than humans. Today, they were going to prove it. Tyshrol began to speak. The crystal alien's voice came from speakers around the room because it had no mouth. Human Morrison, you stand before the Galactic Council to hear our final decision about your species. Jake said nothing. He had been told to stay quiet unless asked a direct question. But inside, his anger was growing. These aliens had been planning this for months, maybe years. The human species has been found guilty of excessive violence. Tyshrol continued. Your people solve problems by fighting. You make war when you should make peace. You are dangerous to the order we have built in this galaxy. One of the Zephyrians clicked its mandibles together, making a sound like breaking glass. The humans destroyed their own moon base in a civil war. They fought their own children on Mars. They cannot control themselves. Jake's hands made fists, but he kept them at his sides. The Mars thing still made him angry. The colonists there had tried to break away from Earth. They had stopped sending food and medicine to the outer colonies. People were dying, and the Mars colonists did not care. Earth had to stop them. But the aliens did not see it that way. They only saw humans fighting humans. They did not understand that sometimes you had to fight to protect innocent people. A Nebulan's cloud swirled faster in its tank. Most concerning is the Battle of Europa. Human forces used weapons of mass destruction against a small pirate fleet. This was not proportional response. This was barbarism. Jake almost spoke then. Those pirates had not been small. They had stolen 3 cargo ships full of medicine meant for sick children on the colony world of Haven. When the human patrol ships found them, the pirates had threatened to kill all the hostages unless they were allowed to escape. Jake's captain had made a hard choice. He destroyed the pirate ships before they could hurt anyone else. Yes, it was violent. Yes, it was brutal. But it saved lives. The aliens did not care about that. They only cared that humans were willing to do what others would not. The evidence is clear, Tyshrol said. Humans are too emotional, too unpredictable, too willing to use force. You do not belong in civilized space. Jake finally spoke. What about all the good we have done? What about the colony ships we saved from the solar flare near Kepler? What about the medical supplies we rushed to the Altair system when the plague hit? What about the mining station we built for free on Rigel Prime? The crystal alien's surface dimmed. These actions do not excuse your violent nature. A civilized species does not need to be violent to be helpful. Easy to say when you have never been in danger, Jake said. His voice was getting louder. Easy to be peaceful when you live in the safe core systems, where nothing bad ever happens. The Zephyrian spoke again. You prove our point with your anger, human. You cannot discuss this matter without showing aggression. Jake took a deep breath. He had to stay calm. Getting angry would only prove their point. What do you want from us? Tyshrol's crystal body pulsed with light. The Galactic Council hereby orders all human presence to withdraw from civilized space. You have 6 standard months to remove all colonies, ships, and installations from the inner and middle rim systems. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. You are exiling us. You will relocate to the outer rim territories, beyond the edge of civilized space. There you may live as you choose, but you will have no contact with the rest of the galaxy. Jake's mind raced. The outer rim was mostly empty space and dead worlds. There were no trade routes, no established colonies, no support systems. It would be like starting over from nothing. And if we refuse? He asked. The 12 alien species all moved at once. Some leaned forward, others made threatening sounds. The message was clear. Then the combined fleets of the Galactic Council will ensure your compliance, Tyshrel said. We hope this will not be necessary. Jake knew it was over. Humanity had fewer than 200 ships in space. The Council had thousands. There was no choice but to obey. 6 months, he said. 6 months, the crystal alien agreed. Use them wisely. As Jake walked out of the great chamber, he heard the aliens already talking among themselves. Some were making bets about how long humans would survive in exile. Most thought 50 years at most. Some said 20. None of them said forever. They had made a big mistake. The news hit Earth like a bomb. President Lisa Carter stood behind her desk in the Oval Office, looking at the camera that would carry her words to every human colony in space. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but her hands still shook. My fellow humans, she began. Today, the Galactic Council has ordered us to leave civilized space. We have 6 months to gather our people and move beyond the outer rim. In his lab in Geneva, Dr. Ryan Phillips stopped his work and stared at the screen. 6 months to move 40 million people from 37 different worlds. It was impossible. But then again, humans had done impossible things before. He started making lists. Food, water, air recyclers, medicine, tools, computers, seeds, animals, building materials. They would need everything to start over in empty space. His fingers flew over his tablet as he calculated numbers. They would need every cargo ship humanity had ever built, and then they would need more. General Amy Brooks was already moving before the president finished speaking. From her office in the Pentagon, she began sending orders to every human military base in the galaxy. Operation Exodus begins now, she told her staff. I want transport schedules in 4 hours, and security plans in 8. The biggest job fell to Captain Ben Taylor. He commanded the merchant marine fleet that carried goods between human colonies. His ships were big and slow, built for moving cargo, not people, but they were what humanity had. We need to strip everything down, he told his crew chiefs over the video link. Pull out the cargo holds and put in life support. We are going to pack people in like sardines, but we are going to get them all out. The first ships began moving within a week. Captain Steve Miller took his ship, the New Hope, to the furthest human colony at Tau Ceti. 50,000 people lived there on a world of endless ice. They had spent 20 years building their city under the frozen surface. Now they had to leave it all behind. Take only what you can carry, Miller told the colonists as they lined up at the spaceport. 1 bag per person. That is all we have room for. Some people cried as they left their homes. Others looked angry, but they all got on the ships. They trusted that other humans would take care of them, even if the aliens would not. Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan worked 18 hours a day designing new habitats. The outer rim had dead worlds, with no air and empty space, with no planets. Humans would need places to live that they could build quickly. Her designs looked like metal boxes with life support systems. They were not pretty, but they would keep people alive. Each habitat could hold 1,000 people and could be put together by a crew of 50 in just 3 days. We are not building homes, she told her team. We are building lifeboats. They just need to work until we can do better. Dr. Maria Santos had a different view of the exile. While everyone else saw it as punishment, she saw it as opportunity. The Outer Rim was full of worlds that nobody had ever studied. There might be new minerals, new energy sources, maybe even new life forms. The council species are lazy, she told her research team. They stay in their comfortable core worlds and ignore everything else. We are going to find things they never dreamed of. Her ships were already preparing for the journey. Instead of just carrying people and supplies, they would carry laboratories and survey equipment. If humanity was going to live in the Outer Rim, they were going to learn everything about it. The evacuation was not smooth. On New Austin, a group of ranchers refused to leave their cattle behind. They said the animals were family, and families stayed together. It took 3 days of arguing before Captain Taylor found room for 500 head of cattle on his transport ships. On Haven's Rest, the hospital was full of patients too sick to move. Dr. Angela White volunteered to stay behind with a small medical team to care for them until they were strong enough to travel. She would take the last ship out, just days before the deadline. The worst moment came when the New Hope suffered a massive engine failure while carrying 50,000 people from the ice world. The ship was dead in space, its life support failing. In the middle of nowhere, Captain Miller sent out a distress call, knowing that council ships were nearby. They had been escorting human ships to make sure they actually left, but when the New Hope called for help, the council ships did not answer. This is Captain Miller of the human vessel, New Hope. We have 50,000 civilians aboard, and we are losing life support. Please respond. Silence. Lieutenant Carol Price was monitoring communications from her post on the patrol ship Guardian. She heard Miller's calls getting more desperate as the hours passed. The council ships were close enough to help in 30 minutes, but they did nothing. They are going to let them all die, she told her captain. Not if we can help it, Captain, Nick Johnson replied. He ordered his small patrol fleet to maximum speed toward the New Hope. It would take them 6 hours to get there, but they had to try. What happened next became a legend among humans. Every ship in the area, military and civilian, raced to help the New Hope. They brought spare parts, extra life support, and repair crews. Working together in spacesuits, human engineers got the New Hope's engines running again. They saved all 50,000 people. The council ships watched from a distance and said nothing. Word of the rescue spread through every human ship in the evacuation fleet. The aliens might have abandoned them, but humans would never abandon each other. That was the difference between them and the so-called civilized species. As the months passed, the Great Migration continued. Entire worlds were emptied, and their people loaded onto transport ships. The ships carried not just people, but everything humans would need to rebuild. Factory equipment, computer servers, genetic samples, art and music, and books. General Brooks made sure that weapons and military equipment were also loaded, though she kept that fact secret. The council had demanded that humans disarm, but Brooks knew that the universe was a dangerous place. Humans might need to defend themselves in the wild territories of the Outer Rim. By the 5th month, most of the evacuation was complete. The last ships were loading from Earth itself, taking people who had volunteered to help set up new colonies. In exile, these were engineers, doctors, teachers, and farmers who wanted to help humanity start over. Admiral Morrison watched the final ships leave from the observation deck of the orbital station. Soon, even this station would be empty. Humanity was really leaving everything behind. But as he watched the ships disappear into hyperspace, Morrison felt something unexpected. Not sadness, but excitement. Humanity had always done its best work when things were hardest. Maybe exile would not be the end of human civilization. Maybe it would be a new beginning. The council had made their choice. Now humans would make theirs. 12 years had passed since the exile began. Admiral Tony Garcia floated in his command suit outside the hidden shipyard in the Kronos asteroid field. Around him, human workers moved like ants between the rocks, building something the galaxy had never seen before. The shipyard was invisible from the outside. Hollowed-out asteroids hid the construction bays where new human ships were taking shape. These were not the same slow cargo vessels that had carried humanity into exile. These ships were built for war, though Garcia hoped they would never need to prove it. "Status report," he said into his helmet. "Come." Chief Engineer Kate Sullivan's voice crackled back. Bay 7 just finished the hull plating on the New Horizon. She will be ready for engine tests next week. Bay 12 is starting work on 3 new patrol ships. Garcia smiled inside his helmet. The New Horizon would be humanity's flagship, bigger and more powerful than anything they had built before. But size was not what made her special. It was what was inside her that would surprise the galaxy. Deep in the Kepler Nebula, Dr. Angela White stared at the alien artifact on her laboratory table. It was small, about the size of her fist, made of some black metal that did not appear in any periodic table. The surface was covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Computer, run Translation Protocol 7, she said. The lab's computer hummed for several minutes before responding. "Translation incomplete. Symbols suggest quantum manipulation technology beyond current understanding." Angela had found the artifact in the ruins of a dead city on a world the survey teams called Ghost Planet. The city was older than human civilization, older than any of the Council species. But somehow, Angela's team had been able to activate some of the ancient machines. The breakthrough had come when Dr. Sam Turner realized that the machines responded to human brain patterns differently than they did to alien ones. Something about the way humans thought allowed them to interface with technology that other species could not even recognize. "It is like they built it for us," Turner had said. "But that is impossible. These ruins are millions of years old." Governor Paul Lewis stood on the observation deck of New Earth Station and looked out at the growing city below. The planet hung in the middle of the Kepler Nebula, hidden from Council sensors by the swirling gas and radiation. It was humanity's secret capital, a world that officially did not exist. New Earth was not like the old Earth. There were no big sprawling cities or industrial wastelands. Everything was built to work with nature instead of against it. The cities were small and efficient, connected by maglev trains that ran silently through the forests. But underneath the peaceful surface, New Earth was preparing for something. Hidden factories built weapons and equipment. Underground bunkers stored supplies for a war nobody talked about, but everyone expected. Commander Helen Ross stood in the ruins of what her team called the Great Library. The building was carved from a single piece of crystal that rose from the surface of Dead World 3 like a mountain. Inside, walls covered with alien writing told the story of the species that had built this place. They called themselves the Forerunners, Ross told her exploration team. According to these records, they ruled this entire section of the galaxy for over 1 million years. Dr. Sam Turner ran his scanner over the crystal walls. "What happened to them?" Ross pointed to a series of images carved into the crystal. They showed ships bigger than space stations arriving from somewhere beyond the galaxy. The ships had no clear shape, looking more like living things made of metal and darkness. Something came from outside the galaxy. Something that scared the Forerunners so much they hid their technology and ran the last entries. Talk about the hungry dark and devourers of worlds. Turner studied the images more closely. How long ago was this? Best guess? About 50,000 years? Deep in Council space, Captain Laura Hughes drifted through the wreckage of a Zephyrian mining station. Her small scout ship was painted black and carried no identification. Officially, it did not exist. Officially, she was not here. The mining station had been abandoned in a hurry. The Zephyrians had left valuable equipment behind, something they never did unless they were running from something worse than bankruptcy. Hughes activated her suit's recorder and began documenting what she found. Personal log, Day 43, of reconnaissance mission. The pattern continues. Council species are pulling back from their outer territories. Trade between member worlds is down 30% from last year. She moved deeper into the station, following emergency lighting that flickered weakly in the darkness. In the station's command center, she found what she was looking for, the communication logs. Computer, download all files, she ordered. Her ship's computer was loaded with software that Dr. White's team had developed using Forerunner technology. It could break through alien security systems like they were made of paper as the files downloaded. Hughes read through the most recent messages. They confirmed what human spies had been reporting for months. The Council was falling apart. The Zephyrians and Nebulans were fighting over mining rights in the Vega system. 3 smaller species had declared independence and were refusing to pay council taxes. Even the Vorthok were pulling back from their border territories. But most interesting were the reports from the deep space monitoring stations. Something was coming from the direction of the galactic edge. Something big enough to show up on sensors from light years away. Back on New Earth, President Lisa Carter read Hughes' report with growing concern. She had been elected to a 3rd term by the humans in exile, something that would have been impossible under the old Earth Constitution. But exile had changed many things. How long before whatever is coming reaches council space? She asked General Amy Brooks. Brooks consulted her tablet. Dr. Phillips estimates 18 to 24 months, depending on their speed. Could be sooner if they have better engines than we think. And how long before they reach us? If they get through council space, maybe 2 years after that. Carter leaned back in her chair. Humanity had spent 12 years building a new civilization in the Outer Rim. They had found amazing technology in the Forerunner ruins. They had built ships and weapons the Council could not imagine. But were they ready for whatever had destroyed the Forerunners? What does Admiral Morrison think? He thinks we need to warn the Council. Carter almost laughed. Warn the species that exiled us. The ones who bet we would be dead in 50 years. He says it is the right thing to do. In his quarters, aboard the New Horizon, Admiral Jake Morrison stared out at the stars and thought about choices. He had been young when the Council exiled humanity, angry and full of righteous fury. 12 years in the wilderness had changed him. He had seen what humans could accomplish when they worked together. He had seen them build wonders in the empty spaces between stars. He had seen them unlock secrets that species millions of years older could not understand. But he had also seen the recordings from the Forerunner ruins. He knew what was coming, and he knew that no single species could stop it, not even humans. The communication console in his quarters chimed. A message was coming in from deep space, from one of the long-range sensor stations that watched the edge of the galaxy. Morrison opened the message and felt his blood turn cold. The approaching fleet was bigger than anyone had estimated. Thousands of ships, each one the size of a space station, and they were moving faster than predicted. He opened a channel to President Carter. "Ma'am, we have a problem, a big one." The screen filled with Carter's tired face. "How big? The kind where we all work together, or we all die together?" Carter was quiet for a long moment. "Contact Admiral Garcia. Tell him to start building ships faster. Then contact Admiral Morrison on the old Council frequency." "Yes, ma'am." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them the humans want to talk. Tell them we have information about what is coming. And tell them they are going to need our help, whether they want it or not." Morrison closed the channel and began composing the most important message in human history. 12 years ago, the Council had exiled humanity for being too dangerous, too violent, too willing to fight. Now they were about to learn that sometimes dangerous was exactly what you needed. The first world to die was Zector, homeworld of the Zephyrians. 12 billion insectoid beings lived on its surface, when the dark ships arrived. 3 hours later, there was nothing but empty space where the planet had been. Council speaker Tyshrol stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The crystal alien's body flickered with confused patterns of light. This is not possible. Planets cannot simply disappear. Admiral Kethfer of the Nebulan fleet hovered in his gas-filled tank, his cloud form swirling with agitation. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. They appear to convert matter directly into energy, then absorb that energy for their own use. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from 12 species argued in a dozen different languages while their worlds burned. The Zephyrian seat sat empty now, its occupant having died with his homeworld. "We must evacuate the border systems immediately," declared the Altarian ambassador, her feathers ruffled with fear. "Fall back to the core worlds and prepare defenses." Tyshrel's crystal form pulsed red. "There will be no retreat. The Council fleet will engage these invaders and destroy them." But even as the crystal being spoke, more reports flooded in. The Kepler mining stations, gone. The research facility at Wolf 359, consumed. 3 more colony worlds, erased from existence. The enemy called themselves nothing. They simply came, devoured, and moved on. Their ships were black and seemed to bend light around them. They made no attempts at communication and ignored all surrender offers. Hi. Admiral Ventar of the Council fleet led the first major engagement near the Centauri system. His force included 800 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Council. The enemy met him with just 50 vessels. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When it was over, Ventar's flagship drifted powerless in space, its crew dead from energy drain. The enemy ships had somehow pulled the life force from every living being aboard while leaving the hull intact. 799 other Council ships suffered the same fate. The 50 enemy vessels continued toward Centauri Prime as if nothing had happened. In the ruins of the Council chamber, on Nexus Prime, Tyshrol received a transmission that it never expected to see. The signal came from the Outer Rim, from the space where humans had been exiled 12 years ago. Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen, older now, his hair gray and his face marked by years in the wilderness. Behind him stood other humans in military uniforms, their faces grim but determined. "Council Speaker," Tyshrel Morrison began, "I am transmitting from the human fleet flagship New Horizon. We have been monitoring the attacks on Council space." The crystal being's surface went completely dark. "You dare contact us now, when we face extinction? Have you come to gloat over our downfall?" Morrison's expression did not change. "We have come to help." Hysterical clicking came from the remaining Zephyrian ambassador. "Help? From the barbarians we exiled? You have nothing we need. We have information about your enemy," Morrison continued, "and we have weapons that can hurt them." Dr. Angela White stepped forward on the screen. In her hands, she held a device that pulsed with alien energy. "We found ruins in the Outer Rim, ruins of the species that built this galaxy's first civilization. They called the enemy the Devourers. They fought them 50,000 years ago and lost." Tyshrel's crystal body began to flicker with interest, despite its fear. "You have studied the Forerunner ruins. That is impossible. No species has ever been able to activate their technology. No other species thinks like humans do," Dr. White replied. "The Forerunners built their technology to interface with minds. That could make intuitive leaps, that could see connections others missed. They built it for species like us." On the bridge of the New Horizon, Admiral Tony Garcia watched the Council fleet positions on his tactical display. What remained of the mighty Council armada was scattered across a dozen systems, running from an enemy they could not fight. "Incoming transmission from the Vorthok flagship," reported Lieutenant Carol Price. Now a full captain after 12 years of service. The screen filled with the image of Fleet Commander Zethanel, one of the few high-ranking council officers still alive. The crystal being's form was cracked and dim with exhaustion. Human Admiral Zethanel said, "Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields. Our ships cannot match their speed. How can you succeed where we have failed?" Garcia gestured to the weapons officer beside him. Captain Steve Miller, the man who had saved 50,000 people during the evacuation, activated a display showing the New Horizons armaments. "We do not fight them the way you fight them," Garcia explained. "You try to destroy them with brute force. We learned from the Forerunner records that the Devourers feed on energy, so we built weapons that disrupt their feeding process." The display showed sleek missiles with crystalline warheads, quantum disruption torpedoes. They create fields that prevent matter-to-energy conversion. The Devourers cannot feed, and their ships become vulnerable. But even as Garcia spoke, he knew the truth. Humanity had built perhaps 200 ships in their 12 years of exile. The Devourers had thousands. Even with superior weapons, the numbers were impossible. On New Earth, President Lisa Carter addressed the human population via emergency broadcast. Every human settlement in the Outer Rim received her message simultaneously. "My fellow humans," she began. 12 years ago, the Galactic Council cast us out. They called us dangerous. They said we did not belong in civilized space. Today, civilization itself faces extinction. The camera pulled back to show her standing before a massive star map. Red dots marked the worlds the Devourers had already consumed. The wave of destruction was moving steadily toward the core worlds where billions of Council citizens lived. "We could stay here in the Outer Rim," Carter continued. "We could let the Council face this threat alone. They exiled us. They abandoned us. They left us to die. Some might say they deserve whatever fate awaits them." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But we are human, and humans do not abandon others to die, even those who have wronged us. The enemy that destroys the Council will eventually come for us too. We will stand together or fall together." Governor Paul Lewis had already begun mobilizing the hidden factories on New Earth. Production lines that had built mining equipment were now building quantum torpedoes. Shipyards that had constructed cargo vessels were now launching warships. Commander Helen Ross led evacuation fleets toward Council space, carrying supplies and equipment that the surviving Council worlds desperately needed. Her ships also carried something else: hope that someone in the galaxy knew how to fight the Devo-RS. Dr. Sam Turner worked around the clock in the Forerunner archives, searching for any advantage the ancient records might provide. What he found was disturbing. The Forerunners had not lost because they were weak. They had lost because they faced an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. "The Devourers do not just consume matter and energy," he reported to the human command staff. "They consume knowledge, experience, tactical information. Every ship they destroy makes them smarter. Every world they devour makes them more powerful." General Amy Brooks studied the tactical reports from the first engagements. "Then we have to hit them hard and fast, before they can adapt to our weapons." "There is something else," Turner continued. "The Forerunner records mention a weakness. The Devourers are controlled by a hive mind, a central intelligence that coordinates their entire fleet. If that mind could be disrupted, the whole fleet becomes vulnerable," Brooks finished. "Where is this hive mind?" Turner pointed to a massive ship on the display, easily 10 times larger than anything else in the Devourer fleet. "There, the command vessel. But getting close enough to attack it would be suicide." Captain Nick Johnson, now commanding the human patrol fleet, smiled grimly. "Good thing humans are crazy enough to try suicide missions." As the combined human and Council fleets prepared for the final battle, a message went out across all frequencies. It was broadcast in every language spoken by every species in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the human fleet. To all Devourers, receiving this transmission. You made a mistake when you came to our galaxy. You thought you would find weak, divided species that would fall easily. Instead, you found something you did not expect. You found species that can work together when survival is at stake. And you found humans. The message continued as human ships jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the final confrontation. We are the species the Council called too dangerous for civilized space, too violent, too willing to fight. Today, you will learn why they were afraid of us. Today, you will learn that sometimes dangerous is exactly what the galaxy needs. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The human fleet arrived at Nexus Prime just as the Devourer ships reached the edge of the system. Admiral Tony Garcia stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched 2,000 enemy vessels emerge from hyperspace. Like a plague of metal, locusts. All ships. This is Admiral Garcia. He broadcast on the fleet channel. Remember what we learned from the Forerunner records. The Devourers expect us to fight like the Council species did. They expect us to be civilized. Today, we show them what humans do when civilization is not enough. Captain Ben Taylor commanded the cargo fleet that had been converted into missile platforms. His ships looked nothing like warships, but they carried more firepower than anything the Council had ever built. Cargo fleet ready. Admiral, we have 3,000 quantum torpedoes loaded and ready. The first exchange came when a squadron of Devourer scouts approached the human formation. The alien ships moved like living things, twisting and flowing through space. Their black holes seemed to absorb light itself. Captain Steve Miller led the fighter wing in the first attack. His small ships dove toward the enemy scouts like angry wasps, their quantum disruptor cannons firing streams of crystalline energy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Where the disruptor beams hit, the Devourer ships began to break apart. Their ability to convert matter into energy was disrupted, leaving them vulnerable to conventional weapons. Direct hit, Miller reported. The quantum disruptors are working. Enemy shields are down. But the victory was short-lived. The surviving Devourer ships transmitted the battle data to their fleet, and within minutes, new tactics began to appear. The enemy adapted faster than anyone had expected. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Dr. Angela White monitored the battle data with growing concern. They are learning from every hit we score. Their shields are already adapting to our disruptor frequency. Admiral Garcia nodded grimly. Then we change frequencies faster than they can adapt. All ships rotate through disruptor patterns alpha through zeta. Do not use the same frequency twice. The battle became a deadly game of adaptation and counter-adapt. Human weapons evolved in real time as their computer systems, enhanced with Forerunner technology, found new ways to disrupt Devourer defenses. But the enemy fleet was vast. For every Devourer ship the humans destroyed, 10 more took its place. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity could not win through superior numbers. On the Council station, Tyshrol watched the battle with something approaching wonder. The crystal being had seen the humans fight before, but never like this. They moved with precision and coordination that the Council species had never achieved. How are they doing this? Asked Admiral Kethver, his gaseous form swirling with confusion. They have been in exile for 12 years. How do they have such advanced weapons? Fleet Commander Zethanel's damaged crystal form flickered with understanding. They found something in the outer rim. Something we ignored because we thought it was worthless territory. The turning point came when Captain Nick Johnson identified the Devourer command ship hiding in the center of their formation. The massive vessel was easily 10 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could destroy moons. There, Johnson told his squadron leaders over the com, that is where their hive mind controls the fleet from. If we can take it out, the rest of their ships will lose coordination. Lieutenant Commander Helen Ross, now leading her own battle group, studied the tactical display. The command ship is protected by at least 50 escort vessels. Getting through them would take our entire fleet, and we would take massive casualties. Johnson's voice was calm, despite the chaos of battle around them. Not if we do it the human way. What happened next became known as the Prometheus Gambit, named after the ancient human myth about stealing fire from the gods. Johnson's plan was simple, insane, and typically human. Instead of fighting through the escort ships, a small group of human vessels would disguise themselves as destroyed council ships. Using Forerunner stealth technology, they would drift toward the command ship, while appearing to be harmless wreckage. Captain Carol Price volunteered to lead the mission. Her ship, the Guardian, had been retrofitted with the most advanced quantum torpedoes humanity possessed. If we can get close enough to plant charges on their hull, we can disrupt the hive mind from the inside. The mission required perfect timing. Price's team had to drift through the enemy formation without being detected, then get close enough to the command ship to deploy their weapons. If they were discovered too early, they would be destroyed instantly, as Price's ships began their silent approach. The main battle raged around them. Human and council ships fought desperately to keep the Devourer fleet distracted, while the infiltration team moved into position. Captain Miller's fighter squadrons performed impossible maneuvers, dancing between enemy fire while targeting critical systems. General Amy Brooks coordinated the defense of Nexus Prime itself, using the station's massive guns to destroy any Devourer ship that got too close. Dr. Sam Turner, monitoring communications from the research ship Discovery, made a crucial discovery. As the battle progressed, the hive mind is not just controlling their ships, he reported. It is learning from every engagement, storing tactical data, and sharing it across the entire fleet. If we do not stop it soon, it will become impossible to defeat. Price's infiltration team reached the outer edge of the command ship's escort formation. The Guardian and her two sister ships drifted slowly through the debris field created by the ongoing battle, their engines cold and their weapons powered down. Enemy contact bearing 27 Mark IV, whispered Price's sensor officer. Devourer escort passing within 500 meters. Price held her breath as the alien ship glided past them like a metal shark. Its sensors swept over the Guardian but detected nothing more threatening than space junk. The Forerunner stealth technology held. Contact clear, the sensor officer reported. We are through the first perimeter. It took 40 minutes to reach the command ship itself. Up close, the vessel was even more terrifying than it had appeared on sensors. Its hull writhed with organic-looking machinery, and energy discharges crawled across its surface like lightning. Reading massive quantum activity, reported the Guardian's science officer. The entire ship is essentially one giant computer processing battlefield data. Price studied the target coordinates Turner had provided. The hive mind's core was located deep inside the ship, protected by layers of armor and energy shields. But Turner had found a weakness in the Forerunner records. A quantum resonance frequency that could disrupt the connection between the hive mind and its drones. All ships, prepare quantum charges, Price ordered. We get one shot at this. The Guardian and her escorts moved to within 50 meters of the command ship's hull. At this range, they could see alien crew members moving through transparent sections of the vessel. The creatures looked nothing like any known species, their forms shifting and flowing like living shadow. Charges armed, reported the weapons officer, ready to deploy on your order. Price looked around the bridge at her crew. They all knew this was a one-way mission. Even if they succeeded in disrupting the hive mind, they would never escape the explosion that followed. It has been an honor serving with you all, she said quietly. Then, louder, deploy charges. All ships, maximum acceleration away from the target. The quantum charges attached themselves to the command ship's hull using magnetic clamps. They would detonate in 60 seconds, giving Price's team just enough time to get clear of the immediate blast radius. But the Devourers were not fooled for long. Alarms began blaring across the command ship as the aliens detected the foreign objects on their hull. Escort ships began turning toward Price's position, their weapons powering up. "Enemy contacts closing fast," reported the sensor officer. "Multiple targeting locks." Price watched the countdown timer reach 30 seconds. "Come on," she whispered. "Just a little longer." The first enemy shot struck the Guardian's shields at 20 seconds. The ship shook violently, and sparks flew from overloaded systems. Price's navigation officer was thrown from his chair as another hit buckled the hull. Plating. 10 seconds. The command ship's own weapons were turning toward them now. Energy beams that could crack planets focused on the small human ships. 5 seconds. "Hull breach on deck 3, someone shouted. "We are losing atmosphere." 3 seconds. Price closed her eyes and thought about Earth, about the home humanity had been forced to leave behind. They had come so far since the exile. They had become something stronger. 1 second. The quantum charges detonated simultaneously, sending waves of disruptive energy through the command ship's hull. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Every system connected to the hive mind began to fail as the quantum resonance tore through the ship's neural network. Across the battlefield, 2,000 Devourer ships suddenly stopped moving. Their coordination vanished as the hive mind that controlled them went silent. Some ships drifted aimlessly, others began firing randomly. A few actually began attacking each other. Admiral Garcia seized the moment. "All ships, general attack, target the disabled vessels. Do not let them regroup." The combined human and council fleets fell upon the confused Devourer ships like wolves on scattered sheep. Without their hive mind to coordinate them, the individual vessels were no match for organized opposition. The battle lasted another 6 hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. One by one, the Devourer's ships were destroyed or disabled. Their command ship, its hull, cracked open by the quantum explosion, drifted dead in space. When the last enemy vessel was destroyed, an exhausted silence fell over the battlefield. Admiral Garcia looked around his damaged bridge and realized that humanity had just saved the galaxy. But the cost had been enormous. Captain Price and her entire infiltration team were gone, their ships vaporized in the quantum explosion. Nearly half the human fleet had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Thousands of brave men and women had given their lives to stop an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy. 3 months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood once again in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. But this time, he was not standing alone. Representatives from every surviving council species flanked him, and the atmosphere was very different from the trial 12 years earlier. Tyrell, the crystal being who had pronounced humanity's exile, now stood to address the assembly. The alien's form was brighter than before, pulsing with what Morrison had learned to recognize as respect. 12 years ago, this council declared humanity too dangerous for civilized space, Tyrell began. "We were wrong, not about humanity being dangerous, but about danger being a weakness." The crystal being paused, its surface reflecting the lights of the great chamber. Humanity's willingness to fight when others would not, to take risks that more cautious species would avoid, to sacrifice themselves for others. These qualities saved our galaxy. Morrison looked around the chamber at the faces of the surviving council members. The Zephyrians were gone, their homeworld consumed. The Altarians had lost half their population. Every species in the galaxy bore scars from the war. The new Galactic Charter recognizes humanity as a founding member of the Reformed Council, Tyrell continued. But more than that, it recognizes that diversity of thought and approach makes us all stronger. We exiled you because we feared what you might become. You became exactly what we needed. Morrison stepped forward to address the assembly. His words would be broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy, 2 colonies that were already returning from exile to reclaim their place among the stars. 12 years ago, you called us dangerous, he said. You were right. We are dangerous. To those who threaten innocent life, we are dangerous to those who would destroy rather than create. We are dangerous to enemies of freedom and justice. He paused, looking directly at Tyshrell. You made a mistake when you exiled us. Not because you were wrong about what we are, but because you thought that was a bad thing. Today, the galaxy learned that sometimes dangerous is exactly what you need. In the months that followed, human ships lead joint exploration missions beyond the galactic rim, searching for other threats that might emerge from the darkness between galaxies. The New Horizon, now the flagship of the reformed Council fleet, carried crews from every surviving species. But in the deep archives on New Earth, Dr. Turner continued studying the Forerunner records. His latest translations suggested that the Devourers had been just the first wave of something much larger. Whatever had destroyed the Forerunners was still out there, beyond the edge of known space. Humanity had saved the galaxy once. Morrison suspected they would need to do it again before the story was over. But this time, they would not face the darkness alone. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous ally was exactly what you needed to survive.